and famous landmarks, you might think of South Beach, the Everglades, or maybe even Cinderella Castle. However, another famous Florida landmark is the St. Augustine Lighthouse, and this particular location has quite a long-standing history. First lit in 1874, the St. Augustine Lighthouse still operates to this day. Not only does the lighthouse still serve its traditional navigational purposes, but it also allows visitors to soak in the views and to learn about maritime history. Speaking of history, let's get into it. Back in 1586, Sir Francis Drake led a military raid on St. Augustine. This raid was illustrated by Italian mapmaker Giovanni Battista Bazzoa in 1589. On the map, there were a few watchtowers which were used to keep enemy ships from overtaking Anastasia Islands. The watchtower at the north end of the island eventually became the site of the St. Augustine Lighthouse. Fast forward to 1737, and the Spanish built a newer 30-foot watchtower in the original location, using stronger and sturdier materials. The British eventually took control of the watchtower in roughly 1763 and added an additional 30 feet to heighten it. However, at the time, there were a lot of issues with shipwrecks off the coast, and people were becoming increasingly aware of the dangers of sailing into the port. On the night of New Year's Eve, 1782, some 16 ships wrecked during a nor'easter while attempting to enter the harbor. Some people think that while under British control, the watchtower might have been used as a lighthouse, but there isn't any confirmed records of that. Florida was ceded back to the Spanish in 1783 in the Treaty of Paris. St. Augustine was once again a military outpost on the fringe of Spain's colonies. The Spanish quickly tore down the British structure, adding a different 40 feet atop of the old watchtower, and then they refortified it with the same material that they used the first time. And it might have once again been used as a watchtower, but we aren't really sure. However, with trade booming and the notorious shipwrecks hanging over the harbor, it was decided that a lighthouse was needed. Originally lit with a system of Winslow Lewis argon lamps and reflector panels, the light emitted from the lighthouse wasn't great, and it wasn't really visible from the sea. Instead of adopting and installing a new expensive lens, the lighthouse was heightened again by an additional 10 feet in hopes that visibility would be better. Finally, by 1853, the St. Augustine Lighthouse had a new 4th order Fresnel lens installed. One single lard oil lamp, fueled by whale oil, was used for light. Interestingly enough, during the Civil War, Confederate sympathizers living in St. Augustine removed and hid the lens and clockwork mechanisms in order to block Union ships. But the Union ended up peacefully taking over St. Augustine anyways. In 1867, the lighthouse was relit, but only for a brief time because in 1871, the original lighthouse fell into the ocean. Congress approved $100,000 to be used to construct a new lighthouse. The U.S. Lighthouse Service began construction on a new 165-foot tower in 1871, and construction was complete in 1874. On October 15, 1874, lighthouse keeper William R. Russell lit the oil lamp inside the new 1st order Fresnel lens for the first time. Today, the lighthouse operates a museum, and guests can visit both the lighthouse and the keeper's house. There are various tours offered, and there's truly something for everyone. One of the most popular tours offered is the Dark of the Moon Ghost Tour, which is an evening tour that goes over some of the paranormal happenings at the lighthouse. After all, a place with this much history has plenty of ghost stories to go along with it. One spirit that is frequently seen is called the Man, as it's hard to pinpoint his exact identity. The Man is tall and thin, dressed in a blue jacket and a mariner's cap, and is often found walking his route up and down the 219-step spiral staircase or looking down from the catwalk above. Some people think this could be the spirit of William R. Russell, while others think that this could be Joseph Andrew. Joseph met his untimely demise in 1859 when he fell from a scaffolding while painting the lighthouse. Joseph left behind his wife Maria, who is said to also haunt the grounds. Upon Joseph's passing in 1859, she became the first woman to serve in the U.S. Coast Guard, and she also became the first Hispanic American woman to command a federal shore installation. It's said that her apparition can be seen at the top of the lighthouse, leaning over the railing and staring at the ground down below. People often wonder if she's imagining what the last few seconds of Joseph's life must have been like. Marie is usually seen as a full-body apparition wearing a white gown. Another well-known spirit is Peter Rasmussen, who was the longest-serving lighthouse keeper, working 23 years on the job in the early 1900s. Peter can often be found in the basement, and visitors report the scent of cherry tobacco whenever Peter is near, especially if someone has been speaking poorly about him. There's also a chair located in the basement that is referred to as Peter's chair, and those who have sat in this chair have reported being scratched and shoved, almost as if Peter's trying to get them out. Interestingly enough, the basement is the only original part of the keeper's house that didn't get burnt down during a fire. Rumors have it that Peter doesn't really like men, doesn't like people who wear hats inside the keeper's house, and doesn't like tourists. While talking to the lighthouse staff, they let us know that Peter is indeed partial to women, and he happens to have a thing for blondes.
Major William Harn is another ghostly resident who can often be found hanging around in the parlor of the main floor of the keeper's house. There's even an exhibit that guests can visit called At Home with the Harns, which is currently installed on the main level of the keeper's house. Harn served at the St. Augustine Light Station from 1875 to 1889. He and his family were the first residents of the Victorian keeper's house. Major Harn died of malaria and tuberculosis about 13 years after moving in. To this day, people have reported the sound of disembodied coughing in the parlor. It's also said that Major Harn does insist upon being called Major Harn, and if anybody calls him otherwise, it's said that the air will feel heavy, and there are reports that a rocking chair will rock violently. Of all the spirits still at the lighthouse, one of the more tragic tales is that of 3 young girls. In 1871, Superintendent of Lighthouse Construction, Isaac of Pity, moved with his family down to St. Augustine to build a new lighthouse. Mr. Pity lived on site with his wife Mary and their children, Mary, Adelaide, Eliza, Edward, and Carrie. During the construction of the lighthouse, the Pity girls would enjoy playing in the construction site, and one of their favorite things was to ride a railway cart that was used to help move supplies. On July 10, 1873, tragedy struck. Mary, 15, Eliza, 13, Carrie, 4, an unknown girl, approximately age 10, were playing on the cart as they usually did. For some reason, the wood board that was used to stop the cart from falling into the ocean was not closed. The cart carrying all 4 girls ended up flipping into the water below. A young worker, Dan Sessions, saw what was happening and raced down to the water to try and save the girls. Unfortunately, 3 of the girls drowned, and Carrie was the sole survivor. The girls tend to be more playful spirits, which would make sense due to the fact that they passed away so young. The girls often appear as full-body apparitions, wearing Victorian-era clothing. Disembodied giggling can be heard throughout the grounds. Many people report that the girls like to play hide and seek, appearing in certain locations and vanishing once they have been found. Others report that their shoes are untied, which could be the result of girls playing a prank. Lighthouse staff told us that the girls will sometimes manifest their energy more around repeat visitors, especially those who are kind and are willing to play games with the girls. There have been more reports about strange happenings and sightings around the lighthouse. People report feeling uneasy on the grounds at night, and some have heard inhuman-like growls coming from the surrounding areas. When you think of the history of the St. Augustine Lighthouse itself, it's not too surprising that there are reports of paranormal and weird occurrences. But is the St. Augustine Lighthouse actually haunted or not? Stay tuned, because next week we'll drop the paranormal investigation of the St. Augustine Lighthouse. Make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that little bell button. You don't want to miss it.